Okay, so I wanted to try and do a quick video about marriage. I was partially inspired to do this video by watching Belief Nuts Rick Warren interviewed on gay marriage and divorce. And there's some of the parts of the interview that I agree with. For example, he does rightly point out that many religious conservatives are very hypocritical in their condemnation of gay marriage, while at the same time being very readily tolerant of divorce, simply because, you know, people don't want to look at their own sins. They want to cast stones at other people, and I would certainly agree with that. And he also talked about how he felt like gay couples should have the same legal rights as heterosexual couples, and I agree with that. But one thing he said that I disagreed with was that he didn't feel like the word marriage should be used to describe gay couples, simply because, you know, marriage is a 5,000-year tradition, and you know, gay marriage is not traditional. And but then he went on to condemn things like polygamy and adult child marriages, which, you know, there's certainly many grounds you could use to condemn them, but the fact that they're not traditional would not be one of those grounds. So it seemed kind of strange for him to be arguing from the standpoint of tradition while at the same time condemning you know, several forms of traditional marriage simply because they're not, well, rightly not, you know, I guess politically correct in this day and age, because women have more rights and children have more rights than they used to once upon a time. So I just wanted to point that out. And another thing that I wanted to say about marriage that I've been thinking about recently, I a couple of months ago ran across a discussion thread on the internet at don'tmarrywordpress.com, and I'll put a link to it in the description of my video so you can go look at it for yourself. But basically it was a long discussion thread of various men complaining about their marriages, how they felt trapped in their marriages, how they felt tricked into marriage by their wives, you know, that their wives were very, you know, sexually giving and open basically before marriage, and then after marriage all of a sudden, you know, their sex drive depleted, and obviously the men were very distraught by this and sexually frustrated, and many men basically expressed that they felt entitled to go outside of the marriage for sex because they weren't getting it from their wives. And it really made me think about the connection, traditional and at present day, between prostitution and marriage. Though a lot of people, you know, would find it scandalous for me to make such a comparison, since marriage is so, you know, put on such a pedestal, you know, as being, you know, the only acceptable state, you know, that someone should have marriage in, and or someone should have sex in, I should say. I just, well, for one thing, traditionally, people didn't get married, you know, in like a ceremony. Basically, if you took someone as your sexual partner, it was considered that you were married to that person, and if you then, you know, had another sexual partner after that, it was considered adultery, especially for women, obviously, not so much for men. But for women, certainly, it was considered adultery, and she could be stoned to death, or many other unpleasant fates would await her if she stepped outside the lines, more or less. And, you know, that is traditional marriage. And a lot of people who talk about traditional marriage and use that as a reason to deny gay people rights in the modern age, it just it's very disturbing to me, because I personally don't want to go back to the days where, you know, marital rape was considered a man's right, because the woman was basically his, you know, sexual property to do with as he would. Really, honestly, a wife, traditional wife, was much worse off, or is in some cases, in some parts of the world. It's still like this. Basically, she's worse off than a prostitute who, you know, willingly goes into that line of work. You know, there are certainly many cases where a woman is forced into it, but for the instances where women choose to go into it and choose, you know, what individual sex acts they're going to participate in, certainly I would say that person would have more rights than a woman in a traditional marriage. So I don't understand why. It just seems very strange that prostitutes who go into it willingly and, you know, choose that lifestyle, that they are condemned, and you know, women that are basically worse off as far as, you know, their choices to commit individual, you know, sexual acts, that those women are you know, put on a pedestal as being you know, paragons of virtue, because, you know, simply because they're maybe participating in sex acts that they don't want to with men who happen to be their husbands. And I don't know, while a lot of the threads that I read, I was just referring to, where men are complaining about their wives, while a lot of it was very, I would say, misogynist in nature, I really did have some sympathy for the men who felt like they were tricked into marriage, you know, and felt trapped by, well, basically the fact that women have a lot of control when it comes to child custody specifically, and divorces normally. I did have some sympathy for them, but at the same time, when they're basically saying that you know, that their wives aren't fulfilling their roles as wives because they're not having sex with them, you know, it really made me think of the whole marriage-prostitute correlation, and how odd it is that so many people will, you know, condemn prostitutes, but, you know, women who might have sex with their husbands, you know, in exchange for financial support for themselves or for their children, you know, those women, you know, no one really has much to say about. That's just kind of a weird double standard, and I just figured I'd point that out, because, you know, I really hate it when religious people get on a soapbox of self-righteousness and cast stones at others, when there's just so much about really any religious belief system that you can find plenty of immorality in and criticize from that standpoint. So anyway, that was basically what I wanted to say, and thank you for watching my video.